The day I turned 80, my son handed me a birthday card with a single dollar bill inside. He smiled at me with those eyes I'd wiped tears from when he was just a boy, and he said, "Happy birthday, Mom." I remember thinking that was strange. Not the dollar. That was actually more generous than I'd expected from him lately. No, it was the way he wouldn't look me in the eye. The way his wife Karen kept checking her watch. The way they'd both shown up at my little apartment at 9 in the morning, which was unusual because they never visited before noon. "I have a surprise for you, Mom," Robert said, his voice too cheerful. "A really special one." I clutched my coffee mug and felt a flutter of hope. Maybe they were taking me to brunch. Maybe they'd remembered I loved that little diner downtown. Maybe, just maybe, my son still had a heart beneath all that cold ambition his wife had cultivated. Karen stepped forward and placed her hand on my shoulder. Her touch was like ice, even through my cardigan. "You're going to love it, Evelyn. We've arranged something wonderful for you." That was when the two men in white uniforms appeared in my doorway. I won't lie to you, I screamed. I screamed like a wounded animal because I knew what those uniforms meant. I'd volunteered at a nursing home for 15 years after my Harold passed. I knew the smell, the sound, the hopelessness that lived in those places. "Robert, what is this?" I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. My 80-year-old legs had carried me through 5 decades of motherhood, through grief, through poverty, through everything life had thrown at me. But in that moment, they failed me completely. "We're just taking you somewhere safe, Mom," Robert said, and his voice was flat, empty, like he was reading a script. "You've been confused lately. You're not remembering things properly. We can't have you living alone anymore." "I'm not confused," I cried out, but even as I said it, I remembered yesterday. I remembered searching for my reading glasses for 20 minutes before finding them on top of my head. I remembered forgetting what day of the week it was. Small things, surely. Small things that happen to everyone who's lived 8 decades. Karen knelt beside me, and her eyes were filled with such false pity I wanted to slap her. "Evelyn, you signed the papers, remember? You agreed this was for the best. We have the power of attorney now." The papers, the documents she'd put in front of me last week, when I'd been so exhausted from a sleepless night, when my arthritis was flaring up and my vision was blurry. "It's just some housekeeping forms, Evelyn," she'd said. "Just so we can help you manage things." I signed because I trusted my son. That was my mistake. That was every mother's mistake. "Please," I whispered to Robert as the men helped me into a chair. "Please don't do this. Not today. Not on my birthday." He wouldn't look at me. He just stood there with his hands in his pockets, staring at the floor like it held all the answers. His silence was louder than anything Karen could have said. I was loaded into a van like a piece of cargo. As we pulled away from my home, my little apartment that I'd bought with Harold's life insurance money, the only thing he'd left me, I watched my son and his wife standing on the curb. He was putting his arm around her. She was smiling. It was the last time I saw my home for 6 months. That was the day my son, my only child, the baby I'd held in my arms and promised to protect, put me in a nursing home and left me to rot. But that's not the part you came here to hear. The part you came to hear is about the day I turned the tables. The day I called my lawyer. The day I bought the damn hospital. I guess I should start from the beginning, from long before I was ever anyone's mother. My name is Evelyn Hartwell, and I was born in 1945, right at the end of the Second World War. My father came home from the Pacific, with a metal plate in his head, and a scream that woke us up every night. My mother worked at the cannery until her hands were gnarled like tree roots. We were poor in a way that young people today can't even imagine. Poor in a way that meant you never felt full, never felt warm, never felt safe. When I met Harold, I was 19 and working as a waitress at a truck stop off Route 66. He was 24. A traveling salesman who sold industrial sewing machines to factories across 3 states. He had a kind face and a gentle laugh. He could make you feel like the most important person in the world, just by looking at you. I married him 6 months later. My mother cried at the wedding because she thought I was making a terrible mistake, marrying a man who was never home, who would leave me alone with children and bills, and a life of worry. She wasn't wrong, but she also didn't know Harold the way I knew him. She didn't know the way he could make me feel safe, the way he'd always come home to me. Robert was born in 1968. He came into this world screaming, red-faced, furious to be alive. I held him against my chest, and felt a love so fierce, it almost knocked me down. I promised myself right then that I would protect him from everything, that he would never know the kind of poverty I'd known, that he would have a better life, no matter what I had to sacrifice. And sacrifice I did. When Harold was diagnosed with cancer in 1975, I became his nurse, his cook, his everything. I quit my job at the diner and took care of him in our little house. We'd saved enough for a down payment, but not enough for the treatments, not enough to keep him alive. He died in 1978, on a Tuesday morning in October. The leaves were changing outside the window, and I remember thinking how beautiful they were, how life just kept going, even when yours was ending. He squeezed my hand one last time and said, "Take care of our boy. And Evelyn, don't ever forget who you are." I didn't know what he meant at the time. I was too consumed with grief to understand much of anything. Things I wouldn't discover for 40 years. After he died, I went back to work. I had a 10-year-old son to raise and no one to help me. I worked double shifts at the diner. I cleaned houses on weekends. I mended clothes for neighbors. Robert never went hungry, not once, even when I did. He never wore a hole in his shoes because I'd patched them before he could. I gave him everything I had and more. When Robert went to college, I was so proud I thought my heart would burst. He was the first in our family to ever get a degree. I sold my wedding ring, the one Harold had given me, the only thing of value I owned, to pay for his first semester. I never told him that. I didn't want him to feel guilty. I wanted him to feel free. Robert became a lawyer, a good one too. I watched him climb the ladder, watched him marry a woman named Karen, who came from money, and made sure everyone knew it. I watched him trade his flannel shirts for suits, his pickup truck for a BMW, his kind heart for something cold and sharp. "I just want you to be happy," I told him at the wedding, which cost more than I'd earned in my whole life. "I am happy, Mom," he said. But he wasn't looking at me when he said it. He was looking at his beautiful wife and her beautiful family, all of them dressed in white and gold, all of them looking down their noses at me in my off-the-rack dress. Karen was polite to me, at first. She was polite to me the way you're polite to a stray cat that keeps showing up on your porch. You feed it because you're not a monster, but you're always hoping it will eventually wander off and never come back. She didn't want me at family gatherings, didn't want me at their house, didn't want my old lady smell, or my sad stories, or my tacky presents. Robert defended me at first, but as the years went on, he stopped defending. He stopped visiting. The last time I saw Robert before that awful birthday, I'd been at their house for Christmas. Karen had made a big production of setting a place for me at the children's table. I was 67 years old, and I was sitting on a little plastic chair next to my 5-year-old granddaughter, eating off a plate shaped like a dinosaur. "I hope the seating arrangement is okay," Karen had said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We just thought Grandma would be more comfortable down here where she can see the kids." I smiled. I'd learned how to smile through humiliation the way some people learn to whistle. "Of course, dear. Anything for the children." What I didn't say was that I could hear the adults talking at the big table, that I heard them laughing about me, that I heard Karen calling me poor Evelyn and old and senile, that I heard my son laugh along with her. That was the moment I should have walked out. That was the moment I should have realized what kind of woman Karen was, what kind of man Robert had become. But love makes you blind. Love makes you stupid. I thought if I was just patient enough, kind enough, small enough, they would let me back in. They never let me back in. They just kept pushing me further and further out. Karen's change toward me was subtle at first. A look here, a comment there. Nothing you could point to and say, "That's cruel." Just 1,000 tiny cuts, each one delivered with a smile. "Evelyn, I don't think you should be driving anymore. It's not safe for a woman your age. Evelyn, I rearranged your apartment. The feng shui was all wrong. I threw out those old newspapers. You didn't need them. Evelyn, Robert and I have been looking at nursing homes, just in case. We think it's time to start planning for your future." I remember standing in my kitchen after that last comment, staring at the wall. My hands were shaking as I poured myself a glass of water. She wanted to put me in a nursing home. I'd worked in nursing homes. I'd seen how they treated people. I'd seen the neglect, the abuse, the loneliness. I'd also seen women like Karen, beautiful, rich, unscrupulous women who had no patience for their elderly in-laws. I'd seen them smile sweetly while their husbands' mothers cried. I'd seen them put their hand on an old woman's shoulder and whisper, "It's for the best," while pressing a pen into her hand. I knew what was coming. I just didn't know how fast it would happen. Mom, you need to sign these papers, Robert said one afternoon. He'd shown up unannounced, which was unusual. Karen was with him, hovering in my doorway like a vulture. It's just for the power of attorney, in case something happens to you. What kind of something? I asked. Your health, Mom. Your memory. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Karen and I have noticed things, the way you sometimes can't remember what day it is, the way you lose things. I'm 80 years old, I said. Everyone my age loses things. We just think it's best to be prepared, Karen said smoothly. You don't want to be a burden to Robert, do you? You've always been so self-sufficient. We wouldn't want to take that away from you. Burden. That word hit me like a slap. I'd spent my whole life trying not to be a burden to anyone. I'd worked 3 jobs to make sure my son never went hungry. I'd gone without heat in the winter, so he could have a warm coat. I'd done everything for him, everything, and now I was a burden. Let me read the papers first, I said. Of course, Karen said, and she smiled that smile that never reached her eyes. Take your time. I did read them. I read every word. But I was exhausted from a sleepless night. My arthritis was flaring up, and I was so desperate for my son's love that I would have signed anything. They looked like what they said they were. Documents granting Robert the ability to manage my affairs in case I became incapacitated. What I didn't realize was that the definition of incapacitated had been written by Karen's lawyer cousin. It was broad enough that almost anything could qualify. A memory lapse, a bout of confusion, a fall. In the world of elder law, there are dozens of ways to make someone legally incapacitated. I signed the papers, feeling a strange sense of relief. Maybe this was good, I thought. Maybe this meant they wanted to help me. Maybe they cared after all. That was the last time I was naive about my son and his wife. After that, the visits stopped. Robert would call occasionally, but it was always Karen's voice on the line. Evelyn, Robert is in a meeting. Can I help you with something? Evelyn, we're swamped right now. Can we reschedule? Evelyn, Robert is so tired after work. I don't want him to overexert himself. I knew what was happening. I'd seen it happen to other women. The slow, steady removal of your son from your life. The careful wall built between mother and child by a daughter-in-law who saw you as a threat. I should have fought back. I should have shown up at his office, at his house, at his church. I should have made a scene. But I was too old for scenes, too tired, too heartbroken. I just let them push me away. Then my granddaughter got married. Lily, Robert's daughter, the one I'd babysat when she was little, the one who used to fall asleep on my lap while I read her stories. She got married in a huge ceremony that Karen planned. I wasn't invited. I'm so sorry, Evelyn, Karen said on the phone. It's a destination wedding, and the venue is very small. We just couldn't include everyone. Lily, I said, my voice shaking. Does Lily know? Oh, she understands. She knows you're getting bolder. That travel is hard for you. She doesn't want to burden you. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just stood there, listening to the dial tone after Karen hung up. That was the worst part, I think. Not the exclusion, not the lies, but the knowledge that I had raised a daughter-in-law who felt perfectly comfortable doing these things, and a son who let her. They were still in my apartment, I realized. The men. The van. I was so lost in my memories that I'd forgotten where I was. Ma'am, one of the men was looking at me, with genuine concern in his eyes. Are you all right? Your pulse is racing. I looked around the nursing home lobby. White walls, beige floors, the smell of antiseptic and old people. In the distance, I could hear someone crying. Take me wherever you're taking me, I said. I have no fight left in me. The nursing home was called Sunny Meadows. The name was a joke, because there was nothing sunny about it. The building was old and decrepit. The staff was overworked and underpaid, and the food tasted like cardboard soaked in salt water. But that's not what broke me. What broke me was the day my daughter-in-law held a garage sale of my belongings and sold my wedding ring. It happened 3 weeks after I'd been institutionalized. I'd been trying to be cooperative, trying to be a good patient, hoping that if I was good enough, someone would let me out. I went to the activities, participated in the group therapy, smiled at the nurses. I was so desperate to get out of there, I would have done anything. Then Karen walked in, carrying a small cardboard box. Evelyn, she said, her voice sweet as poison. The doctors say you're doing much better. We're so proud of you." I looked at her face, trying to see if there was any trace of love in it. There was none. "What's in the box?" I asked. "Just some of your things," she said. "I'm having a garage sale this weekend, and I thought you might want to go through your personal items before I sell them, just in case there's something you want to keep." I knew what she was doing. She was controlling the narrative. If I kept anything, she'd accuse me of hoarding. If I let her sell everything, she'd make money off my pain. She had me trapped. "I don't want any of it," I said. "Take it all. I'm dead to the world anyway." "You're not dead, Evelyn," she said, but she was smiling. That day she and Robert came to the nursing home again. They'd brought Lily, my granddaughter, the girl who'd been too busy for Grandma for years now. Lily looked uncomfortable, glancing around the drab facility with visible disgust. "Evelyn, we need you to sign something else," Robert said, his voice flat. "The house. The one you've been living in. We need to transfer the deed to our name. It's more practical for tax purposes. The house. My house. The one Harold and I had saved for. The one I'd raised Robert in. The one I'd poured all my savings into. The only thing of value I owned in this entire world." "I don't understand," I said. "Why would you need to do that?" Karen stepped in. "Evelyn, the house needs a lot of work. Robert and I have already invested in repairs. It's better if the deed reflects the actual owners." I looked at Robert, searching his face for any sign of the boy I'd raised. But he wasn't there. He was just a cold, hard man in an expensive suit, staring down at his mother. "I don't have to sign anything," I said. "I'm not incapacitated. I'm not incompetent. I'm just old, and they stuck me here." "Evelyn, you signed over power of attorney," Robert said. "That means I can make decisions on your behalf. If you don't sign this, we'll have to go through a process. It will take months, but it will happen. And those months will be very unpleasant for you." I looked at my hands. They were covered in age spots, veins, wrinkles. These were the hands that had held Robert when he was a baby. Hands that had changed his diapers, wiped his tears, patted his back when he was sick. He didn't care. He didn't care at all. "Fine," I said. "I'll sign it." I signed the deed over to my son and his wife. I didn't have a choice. I had nothing else. Why should I care about a house I'd never see again? "Good," Karen said, taking the signed papers. "Now, about that ring." "What ring?" I asked. "Your wedding ring," she said, "the one with the inscription. I was going to put it in the garage sale, but then I realized someone might want it. It's very old, probably not worth much, but maybe a collector." "No," I said, a sudden terror gripping me. "You can't sell that. That ring was given to me by my husband. He inscribed it, something inside it, something important." "What inscription?" Karen asked, and I could see the greed in her eyes. "The inside is scratched up. Can't read it anyway." "Please," I whispered. "Please give me the ring. I'll do anything. I'll sign anything." Karen smiled. "Sign the deed, and maybe we'll talk about the ring." I signed the deed. They gave me the ring. The ring with the hidden inscription, which they couldn't read, which was scratched and worn, which contained a secret I'd never told anyone. I told myself it didn't matter. What mattered was getting out of there. They left me alone in my room after that. It had a small window that looked out onto a parking lot, and the bars of the nursing home gate. I sat there in the dark, holding the ring in my hands. It was a simple band, gold-plated with a matching engraving. Harold had given it to me in 1968, a few months after we married. He told me it was his grandmother's ring, but that wasn't true. He'd bought it at a pawn shop for $40 and had the words hidden inside. "Evelyn," he'd whispered on our wedding night, "I don't have much, but I have a secret, something that will always be yours, something no one can take from you." He had shown me how to use the small magnifying glass he'd given me, a hidden code in the engraving, a combination of numbers and letters that led to something else. I used my small flashlight to shine on the ring. There it was, the inscription my son couldn't decipher. Kings County Legal Trust, Box 1421. I almost dropped the ring. For years, my husband had worked as a security guard at a bank. He'd always said it was a dead-end job, but he must have been planning ahead. He must have known he wouldn't live to see his only son become an adult. He must have known life would be difficult for me after he died. "Don't ever forget who you are," he'd told me on his deathbed. "And don't ever give up, Evelyn. The world is full of people who want to take from you, but there are also people who want to give." I'd been too young to understand then, too lost in grief. But now, in the darkness of a nursing home, I understood. Harold had left me a surprise, a safety net, something that would help me survive the worst of life. But I couldn't access it from here. I didn't have anything else. I didn't have any proof of who I was, except the ring, and that was all I had. I made a decision that night. I would get out of this nursing home. I would find out what was in box 1421, and I would make my son and his wife pay for what they'd done to me. The next morning, I called the only person I could trust, my old lawyer, Margaret. Margaret had been my attorney for 30 years. She'd handled my husband's estate, the sale of our house, my retirement accounts. She was old too, but sharp as a tack. If anyone could help me, she could. "Maggie," I said when she answered. "It's Evelyn. I need your help." "Evelyn," she cried, "I've been trying to reach you for months. The nursing home wouldn't let me speak to you. They said it was policy." "Long story," I said. "I need you to go to Kings County Legal Trust. There's a box in my husband's name, box 1421. "What's in it?" she asked. "I don't know," I said, "but it's the only thing I have left." Margaret was quiet for a moment. "Evelyn, I've been looking into the nursing home situation. The transfer of your power of attorney doesn't look legal." I could have challenged it. "You can still challenge it," I said. "But first, find that box." That was the turning point. Not the sale of my house, not the humiliation, but the moment I chose to fight back. 3 days after my call to Margaret, she was waiting in the nursing home lobby when I came down for breakfast. "Evelyn," she said, embracing me, "I found it." I felt my heart skip. "What was it?" I asked. "A key," she said, "to a safety deposit box in the main branch of Kings County Bank. Harold had a key made in 1975 and stored it in that trust box. He left instructions with the bank to contact you in case of an emergency." "Did they contact me?" I asked. "No," she said. "The bank went through a merger. Records got lost. It wasn't until I went in person with the key that they found anything." "So what's in the deposit box?" I asked. "Maps," she said. "Property deeds, securities, a letter from Harold explaining everything. Evelyn, your husband bought land in the early 1970s. He bought it from the city of San Diego for pennies. That land is now worth about $1.2 million. I couldn't breathe. "He also invested in a small healthcare company," she continued, "the one that built a hospital chain that eventually became the largest in the region. Harold didn't just invest in it. He founded it with a few friends. He left his shares to you. The company merged, grew, and now you own a significant percentage of the hospital group. You own this facility, Evelyn. You own the entire nursing home chain." I sat down heavily in one of the lobby chairs. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why didn't he tell me?" "He said you wouldn't believe him," Margaret said gently. "He said you'd think he was trying to buy your love. He wanted you to have a safety net, not a burden. He also said that when you needed it most, you'd find it." I looked at my hands again, at the age spots and wrinkles. I remembered Harold's face, kind and loving, even in death. "He always took care of me," I said, "even when he wasn't here." "He wanted you to be safe, Evelyn, and now you can be." Margaret helped me with the legal paperwork. We filed a motion to have the transfer of power of attorney overturned, citing fraud and coercion. We also filed a separate motion to have the house deed restored to my name. But I didn't stop there. I had bigger plans. "This hospital chain," I said. "How much do I own?" 25%, Margaret said. "You're a major shareholder. You have a voice in how the company operates." "Then I want to change something," I said. "I want to make this facility better." I thought about the crying I heard on my first day, the lonely people who'd been abandoned by their families, the people who had no one to stand up for them. "I want to make sure no one gets treated the way I got treated," I said. "I want to make sure no one ends up here because their family wanted to steal their house." Margaret smiled. "I think we can do that." The family confrontation happened in the nursing home's conference room. I'd been living in my own private suite for a week by then. The nursing home staff was very solicitous of my comfort and privacy. They called me Mrs. Hartwell and asked if I needed anything. I sometimes saw them look at me and whisper. My son and his wife had no idea what was going on. They were being evicted from the house they'd stolen from me, and they were furious. "You can't do this," Karen was screaming at me in the conference room. "We put you in here for your own good." "Was it for my own good?" I asked calmly. "Or was it for your own greed?" Robert was silent, staring at me with wide eyes. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry. Karen made me do it." Karen's face went red. Robert, you coward. Stop fighting, I said. Both of you, sit down. They sat down like children. Karen, you wanted to put me in here so you could get my house. You wanted to control my assets. You manipulated my son and tricked me into signing papers I didn't understand. Evelyn, I can explain, she started. Don't, I said. I don't want to hear your excuses. What I want you to know is that I'm now the majority shareholder of this nursing home chain. I own this facility. I own the house you tried to steal. I own the car you took from me, and I have the documents to prove it. Mom, please, Robert said. What can I do to make this right? Nothing, I said. You can do nothing. You betrayed your mother. You abandoned her on her 80th birthday. You let your wife steal her house and sell her belongings. You let her have a garage sale with my wedding ring in it. I'm so sorry, he said, and he started to cry. I'd been waiting for those tears my whole life, waiting for him to be sorry, to admit that he'd been wrong. But now that they were here, I felt nothing. Save your tears, Robert, I said. I don't want them. I don't need them. I just need you to leave. Evelyn, where are we supposed to go? Karen demanded. I don't care, I said. That's the point. You put me here, and you didn't care when I went. Now you can stay here or you can leave, but I won't be paying for your accommodations. Karen's face went pale. We have Lily. Lily, I said softly, my granddaughter. The one who excluded me from her wedding. She was just following my instructions, Karen said quickly. I told her to keep you away. Lily is an adult, I said. She made her own choice, and she chose to exclude her grandmother. So I've decided to donate my share of the hospital to a charity in her name, the charity she can't ever touch, because she chose the wrong side. Please, Robert said, his voice trembling. Please, Mom, we'll do anything. Anything, I asked? That's what I said to you, when I begged you not to put me in here, when I begged you for the ring. Did you listen? Silence. Get out, I said quietly. Get out of my facility, and if I ever see you again, I'll have security escort you off the premises. They left. Karen was screaming. Robert was crying, and I sat in my chair, feeling nothing but peace. It's been 3 years since that day. I'm 83 now, and I've never felt more alive. I spent the first year renovating the nursing home, not the whole chain, just the facility where I'd been held captive. I hired new staff, improved the food, renovated the rooms. I made it a place where people could live with dignity. I also started a foundation, the Harold Hartwell Memorial Fund. It provides grants to nursing home residents who need help with their medical bills or legal fees. It ensures that no one ends up in a facility because their family stole their house. As for my son and his wife, I haven't seen them much. They're living in a small apartment now, because they can't afford anything else. The house is mine, and I've rented it out to a young couple who are saving up for their first home. They send me pictures of the garden, which is finally blooming again. Robert calls me sometimes. He says he's sorry, that he's in therapy, that he wants to make things right. I talk to him, sometimes for hours, but I'll never forgive him fully. I can't. The scar he left runs too deep. Karen, I've heard, still blames me for everything. She tells anyone who will listen that I was always a difficult woman, that she was just trying to help, that I overreacted. But no one believes her anymore. The truth about her came out. People know what she did. I still think about Harold sometimes. I think about how he knew, even as he was dying, that I'd need that secret. That he left me a way to survive, not because he expected me to be rich, but because he knew the world would try to break me. I'm in a good place now. I have my health, my independence, my dignity. I have a purpose, and I have the knowledge that I was strong enough to survive the worst thing that ever happened to me. You don't need revenge to find peace. You just need to know your own value. And sometimes the best way to prove that value is to walk away and build something better for yourself. I walked away from my son and his wife. I walked away from the person they'd made me into. I walked away from all the hurt and fear and humiliation. And I found myself again.